Hello, everyone. My name is Nikki. Welcome if you are coming from my Higher Purpose Summit. And if you're coming from my last summit, which was all about relationships, today is a workshop on abundance. And I'm so excited because abundance can be so many things to so many different people. But overall, what it means to you, what are you looking for? Is it love? Is it more prosperity? Is it happiness? Is it joy? What is it that you're looking for? Um, I am currently a relationship coach. I still give human design readings. I help people reconnect to who they are, empower themselves so that they can make the proper decisions in their life. And I want to go ahead and pass it over to our guest, speaker, healer, reader, Enki.
Hi, hello. My name is Enki. Thank you for having me, Nikki. I'm just honored. Like I've never, I guess, been on one of your talks or shows or whatnot. So it's a pleasure to work with you and to even just provide, my services to the people that are here present and that are going to be watching or are just seeking guidance in general and any sort of illumination down their path in life. So thank you. I'm glad to be of service, of course, and always.
Enki is honestly the most humble person I have ever met. Um, as my
Oh,
godbrother, as my spiritual mentor, he's taught me so much about the world of metaphysics, so much about the world of spirituality, and how to tap into that. So today we're going to be guided more on the spiritual path of how you can actually tap into your abundance and without actually having to quote unquote do, right? The spiritual path is all about removing conditioning. It's about doing less and still
right.
receiving more in your life. Um, so I would love to begin this workshop just with a grounding and a meditation to help us pinpoint where in your life do you feel blocked from abundance. Go ahead and settle yourself into a comfortable seated position, feet on the ground, shoulders up high, back straight. And we're going to begin with deep breaths. Inhale, hold for 4 seconds, and exhale. All right. Inhale and exhale. Continue to breathe as you follow my voice, as you are guided back to source and your heart and the divinity of who you are, that you have access to bounty, you have access to limitless abundance just by being you. Imagine a light stemming from the center of your heart, a warm, bright white light. And as you feel it, you feel it pulsating and expanding throughout your body. And it starts as a small little light. And the more that you nurture this light, the more the warmth starts to shift It shifts and it encapsulates your whole body. Just envision it moving down your arms into your fingertips and upwards into your throat, lighting up laughter and all the joyful things you want to say. And it continues to rise into your crown, the beautiful creativity that is nurtured, and outward, connecting you into the spiritual field. And it continues to spread downward as well into the solar plexus, the feelings, the emotions, the nurturing, down into the root, the drive, the passion, the material world. It is all within you. And the light continues to spread into the ground and the ground into you. And as you're connecting to this, you remember, I am worthy. I am perfect. I am whole. I am abundant. And source is love. And whatever I choose to create comes from source. It comes from love. If you wish to find love, if you wish to find a partner, they're already here. What does it feel like? What does it feel like to have a community, to have a partner by your side? It feels like the warmth that is already within you. Abundance, prosperity, and all of the big dreams that you have, that you are allowed to pursue your passions, that you are allowed to be you, that you have a gift to bring to the world. And you get to get paid and supported and sustained and nourished just for your gifts. And it gets to be easy because it comes from a source of love and abundance within you. And as you continue to envision the environment that you're surrounded by, tap into the feeling. What is it that you're feeling? And sit with that. Because that is where your heart is. And that is where your abundance is. And we're going to bring that wonderful, expansive light outward into the universe. And know that this space is safe because your light protects you. And your light transforms everything around you. And when you're ready, you're welcome to come back home and open your eyes. right. I hope that helped everyone ground themselves. And Marissa, if you would love to share your experience, I would love to hear what came up for you.
Thank you for that beautiful meditation, Nikki. What most came up for me was the feeling of how I'm supported by my eternal nature and the love that exists, period, though. Like that feeling of all that love all around and within, holding me. That feeling of there's nothing else. That's probably the feeling I'm moving forward with.
Thank
Thanks.
you. And did anything come up for you?
The phrase "I am love," and I think that's the most powerful thing that we can be at all times. And operating out of that state of being, you can approach, not just your own life and, daily experiences, but also be that for your community, for your family, for everyone around you, just as collateral. I don't know the proper term, but that's just being present is the most important thing about being love, you know, and having love be the force that connects your mind, body, and spirit every day.
Thank you. And I would love to know, shifting our awareness back into the abundance we already do have in our lives, the little things, and the ways that we practice abundance. So, are there any ways that each person here practices abundance and connecting to love and source? And I would love for Marissa to share if you would like.
I think for me, it's the practice of remembering that that's the true nature of everything. And so if that's all it is and that's all I am, then everything is a reflection of me. So everything I'm coming to witness is also love. And having that not anticipation so much as expectation and understanding, and like letting that be the thing, getting in the practice of allowing myself to remember that truth continually has been so much fun. And in doing that, it's like this practice too of seeing between, instead of looking at a wall ahead of you, taking a look at the layers in between from where your eyes are to where the wall is, and noticing what is there. There's energy there. It's love and it's everywhere. And so just being as connected with that as I can is my favorite practice, I suppose, at the moment. I don't know if I can choose favorites.
I think it's all expansive. That's the nature of abundance. So wherever you are in the moment, like for me, I feel like in this moment, I want nurturing. And then there's other times where I want to do things. And regardless of what I choose, knowing that it doesn't matter which option is there because we flow with the cycle, and it's okay to flow with the cycle. And I think a lot of people are scared and conditioned to think that they have to be a certain way in order to be abundant, in order to receive abundance. And coming home and returning back to this, the more you tap into who you are, the more you tap into your gifts, the more you show that, your true abundance will start to flow through that.
Right.
And what about you, Enki?
Like as far as what helps me remain in that state,
Yes.
I feel like every day, I grab myself the opportunity to work with positive affirmations in the way that I speak to myself, in my head, and how that plays out into my external reality. Because I used to come from a place where I would just burden myself with pessimistic thoughts, and I would see that reflect outwards into my experiences, and I would always feel very unfulfilled. But then just that simple action of like, just kind of like a light switch, even though it wasn't overnight, but the light switch of changing the way that I start to perceive myself through the power of words also helped empower me in my everyday life. It also reminded me of this lyric I heard in a song one time. I just can't remember the name of the song, but the sentence was, "How can you be alone in a room with God?" And I was just like, you know, in the way that in whether we recognize as God, universe, source, higher power, and whatever it may be that we refer it to, at the end of the day, its core, I guess, universal life force is still love. So when I implemented that thought of like, because universe and source and whatnot is represented by love, that means, not just internally, but even in the environment wherever I may be, is always surrounded by love because of the way that I empower myself with love and loving words.
Wow. Thank you for that. I always I feel enlightened whenever you speak because it does touch upon
Oh.
like the realities that we all experience. Sometimes there's fear, sometimes, there are certain external circumstances that make us feel restricted. And it comes to the reminder like, oh my God, I'm in survival mode. How can we shift into expansive mode? And some of the simple practices you mentioned, affirmations and just slowing down sometimes can really help us reconnect.
Mhm.
Having support. I think that's a big one
Right.
for me. I'm like, please, someone help me in this moment. It's like, okay, let's take a moment to chat and ground ourselves and work through our feelings. Um, and this opens up space for miracles. So that I want to touch upon. Like, oh, is there a very notable moment in your life where you experienced a miracle of abundance when you thought you didn't have any? Um, and I would love for Marissa to begin.
I tried to hit unmute and I kept pressing other buttons. So I I I thought I didn't have an abundance of the unmute button, but then it was there. So I really want to piggyback off Enki's comment about how he used uh sorry, I assumed pronoun and I'm trying to break that habit. Did I use the right pronoun?
It's he, him, they, them, either or.
That's how I feel too. But I just realized I'm trying to break the habit of assuming.
It's okay.
So thank you very much. Um, the whole idea of like having the pessimist thoughts in the past and like realizing that and then starting to change it. I mean, I'm just starting to realize I used to think it was from the wounds that I had. I was diagnosed bipolar 1, depression, anxiety, bulimia, all of these kinds of things. And a lot of my early spiritual work, it was like looking at the wounds, forgiving the wounds, loving the wounds, learning from them, growing from them. And then I realized it recently, like, oh, it's actually so much more simple. It's not the wound. I can decide whether that was good or bad. That doesn't matter. It's the mental habit I chose after that point where I made it say something about the nature of my reality that was completely made up out of all the millions of possibilities after an event would take place, such as like unhealthy relationships, things like that. I would make it mean something. It could have meant anything. It could have meant that this is just not how I want to experience love, but it's giving me more clues about how I want to. But what I made it mean was I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, and I'm going to be I didn't know I was making myself a match for things like that at the time, but that's what my energy was stating. And so it kept getting harder and harder to get out of it because I kept clawing in more and more. And then I made it my identity. I was like, I'm the most messed up person in the world. Like I was like, yeah, I'm so depressed. I hate myself. I want to die. And like I was like proud of it. But like realizing it was just mental habits that humans are capable of doing. And that's the cool thing of being human. We get to create in the sandbox where with free will, we can have duality, we can think against love. Whereas if we weren't in these physical forms and we're reconnected with the whole my assumption and understanding, and who knows, I'm like a baby still learning all these things, but is that it's all love, you know it, so you're not going to be making up these stories about yourself. So how fun that we get to be in the sandbox, getting messy, creating, having these quote unquote horrible life experiences in order to wake up and then realize, oh, I learned a lot. And then from there, just start choosing love and everything and realizing I don't have to spend so much time rehashing old pain. I can just choose to know my reality now is love, and that's all I need. I'm not sure if that even answered your question, and I apologize. I can't remember what the specific question was. Miracle. But from the human perspective and the financial piece, um, so I have two very specific stories. Last year, I have many specific stories. And also I believe that miracles are natural and they're literally everything. Every time we feel love again, that's a miracle. But the really key one was when I owed, it was like 5,800 in taxes. And I had talked to the IRS about how I like messed this up. I needed to do a payment plan. And then they sent me this threatening letter, like, if you don't pay in 30 days, then it's like your fees will be doubled. And like, it was like terrifying. And at first, when I, like, to my human brain that doesn't know, that was like disconnecting from all the other possibilities. And I started to give up. I made it mean. And this was recent. This was, I think, 2 years ago now. So like this is after 7 years of this like intentional path and feeling really good. And I felt so hard and thought, well, this means I'm worthless. Like I'm better off dead than alive. Like all of these human thoughts. And then I had this moment of I give up. Like I recognize I'm my humanness is taking over here in ways that is not helping me, and I give up. And then next thing you know, a friend offered me the money and I paid her back within 30 days. All something I didn't even think, like all within the exact time frame. We got to the bank 1 minute before it closed. I got the money in the day that it was due, and then like paid her within 30, maybe 60 days for the whole amount. I can't remember. There might have been some stragglers, but like I didn't even know where it was going to come from. I'll just leave on that one, but there's been some really big ones.
Wow.
But I think of that, it was me letting go. When I look back, the energy of like, I'm this stress ball of, it's all tight energy. So I was a match for painful, tight energy. But when I finally was like, I give up, I released some of that. And so the natural remedies that were already in the energy field were able to come into my experience, because it's all just a matter of what we're a match for, is my personal experience and understanding, which again is a baby experience and understanding.
I love that. And I think you touch on something very important. It's like that tight controlling aspect, and knowing that we can't control anything. So allowing it to flow actually allowed more abundance to flow through. So I think that's amazing.
And
Wow.
something I wish I'd realized then that I'm realizing in this conversation is it in terms of that control, it's like I don't need to control, because everything is being taken care of behind the scenes for me. I have a million butlers at my surface taking care of all sorts of things I have no idea about energetically. Why try to control
Exactly.
them? They know better than me.
You're giving me reminders every day. Like you're giving me a reminder right now about how source is always with us and we don't have to control, because I'm a control freak and a perfectionist. Like
Isn't it funny to think that we know better than infinite love? I'm sorry, infinite intelligence, but I don't think this is gonna work.
What about you, Anki?
I think also, thank you for sharing, Marissa. That was very powerful. And I totally relate. I went through that phase in my life when I was younger. And I think that's where I want to actually touch upon on one of my experiences, as far as like mm, there's been tons of miracles in my life, but there's been one in particular that has lasted me even till this day for like 6 years now. And that has been 6 years ago in 2016. Shortly after my mom passed, I had the support of a relative, a second cousin, And it was at the time where our family was financially struggling, and I was still like, going to school and educating myself on art and graphic design and animation and things like that. And so we couldn't really afford, powerful hardware or computer strong enough to essentially run a lot of these programs. And she shows up one day to my house and she was like, "Hey, is there anything I can do to like help support you in, any way, shape, or form?" And for a long time, up until that point, I was always very resistant to being receptive to support or help of any sort. But that's because of like family conditioning, that our parents kind of just like instilled within us that like if you're going to receive support from people, it's always going to be like some underlying intention, or people are going to have some sort of expectation when they help you and will want to demand something of you. And so I always felt really insecure about receiving any sort of help or asking for help because of it, and kind of always just tried to find solutions or create my own miracles under my own circumstances. So I wouldn't really feel tied down to any sort of like obligations because someone, extended that help. And long story short, like that same day, she ended up buying me a Microsoft Surface Book, which is like at the time it was a really powerful laptop. I can run like Photoshop, I can run all these art programs, I can animate on it, I can do things that even till this day I'm still using that laptop, even though it's like barely alive now. But if it wasn't for that, I would not have been able to gone as far as like being able to learn about developing websites, being able to, work in the graphic design industry, um, or even just expand upon my creative energy, which is what mostly was my passion in life, is being creative and having the capability to express that, in as many ways as possible, whether through traditional mediums or digital mediums. And the most powerful thing she told me that day was that she was in a similar position when she was younger, and my mom did the same thing for her and gave her $5,000 to pay for rent, to pay for food, to pay for, the baby supplies. And she's like, one day, 5 years later, she ran into my mom after they had lost contact because we were always moving. And when she saw her in the store, she literally like ran up to her and like reconnected with her. And then she was like, "Hey, I'm because of how you helped me back then, I'm in a much better position in life now." And so she ended up repaying her in cash those $5,000. And I felt that same blessing from her, that she would go that far to do that for me as well. And that's been my biggest miracle to date. And I'll always be grateful for that.
Thank you. Oh, I'm gonna cry.
Same.
So beautiful. I love it. And I love how the abundance is more about the abundance of spirit. Like everyone in that story evolved positively in some way and was positively benefited by each other's energy and that abundance. And in my situation too, I brought up money just because I know a lot of people think about that with abundance, but also it helped me bond even more with that dear friend of mine who was just like, oh yeah, this is no big deal for me, and it was so helpful for me to see people just want to help, and like that is really the huge abundance.
Oh, I love that. I would say for me, my abundance came through people first and foremost. I always said like I'm a powerful manifester of people. And now I realize that I am a magnet to abundance, and these things that I deserve to have them, right? We all deserve to have them. We all deserve love and connection. Um, and so I'm very grateful for you, Enki. I'm grateful for you, Marissa, for being here, for connecting with me, for showing me more possibilities, that there's so much more out there. And just being in this space is it's beautiful. It's like you know, I used to think like I would say like monetary wise, my biggest was, you know, when I first started this journey into coaching, there was this program that I wanted to do, and it was so much money. It was like $15,000. And I barely had that in my account. I ran to the bathroom and my husband's like on the toilet. And I said, I will sell my car to do this program. Something intuitively told me to do it, and I will sell my car to do it. But instead, I took what I had in my bank account and I put it in the stock market. And within like a couple of months, I made $18,000 from the stock market to pay for my program and the virtual assistants. And that moment kind of really solidified that if I have a dream, I will be supported. And I don't have to worry about where that's coming from. It's just divine trust that even if you don't have whatever it is to pay for something in order to make your dreams come true, it will come. And you don't know how it's going to come, but it will come. And I'm like, oh. So I hold on to that story because that was like a sign from the universe, like, keep going, keep going.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. All righty. Are we ready to transition, Enki, into your powerful healing, Reiki healing, and reading?
Sure. Do you want me to lead off with Reiki or the readings first?
How do you intuitively feel that it would be best implemented for us?
Hmm. I think I can start off with the readings and then expand upon, whatever it is that comes through with Reiki afterwards, kind of just like to solidify the energy and, you know, and then afterwards, I can potentially do the Tibetan mantras just to close off the reading. Optional.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For people who aren't familiar with like the divinations that you're going to use, can you just give us a brief introduction of what each one is and how they can support us?
sure. Here, let me show you. So I don't know if you can see, but this is my table right now. And so for probably like 10 years now, I've been working a lot with alchemy, spiritual alchemy to be particular, um, which has a lot to do with like transmutation and kind of like the concept of the phoenix, where from its base form, a bird, it turns into ashes after it dies, and then it rebirths as this like mythical creature, um, which is the phoenix itself. And that's kind of just like how we can, in some way, take control of our own lives by transmuting our shadow aspects in our lives. And instead of trying to use, for example, like the teachings of esotericism, magic, and things like that to try and manipulate our environment or circumstances or whatnot in our favor, that's more of like operating kind of like out of a state of lack. We use these practices essentially to empower ourselves instead. So it grants you a lot of time to reflect on yourself and like, what do you consider your shadows? What do you consider the things that you feel are creating blockages in your life? And through so many different modalities, like healing modalities, especially, you can get to the root of every single, not even every single thing, because it's just a life path. Like you're always going to be evolving as an individual, but you create this sort of like foundation of support for yourself to constantly elevate your consciousness and your emotional, mental, and spiritual states in conjunction with your physical states as well. And so these are all different decks. This would be the major arcana and tarot. I got mine essentially themed after Hermeticism, from the Pythagorean Society with like Plato, Pythagoras, and all those people, and their teachings on alchemy. And so you'll see a lot of the imagery. I'll be showing, the cards and whatnot as we move through the reading, but they all have a specific purpose because even though they all may be cards, they don't all function, exactly the same. For example, they're also really beautiful. And then I have a bag of Elder Footbark roots, which in some way it's very similar to the major arcana in tarot, because you can link them and there's just about almost an equal number of runes to cards, but they have archetypes that you refer to. And so I have like entire books here, and like even just for the alchemy like decks, it's just this humongous encyclopedia for like pages, for every single card. And the same thing going for the Egyptian one as well, the Chemeticism tarot. So what these divination practices stem from, as you can see, are from very ancient civilizations and points in time where these things were just considered like reserved for secret societies or for royal lineages at the time. One prime example, actually, in terms of alchemy, was this historical figure named John Dee, and he was alive during the times when the church was carrying out the Crusades, and they were kind of just like burning witches and alchemists and things like that at the stake. But the first queen, Queen Elizabeth I, she granted him kind of just like a modern or did at that time a permit to practice without being I guess killed for it, and in doing so, he was of service to the British family. And he's the reason we have the term the British Empire today. Because through divination practice, he was able to tell her how long she was going to be reigning for and what her lineage and power was going to look like in the future. And even so much as being able to create the term as to that lineage that she was creating at the time. So for a really long time, all of this was essentially kept secret. Even like I said, as far back as the Pythagorean Society, which is where, because of them, today we have our education system, we have our a lot of like societal constructs, philosophy, art, math, religion. So many different things stemmed, from the Pythagorean Society, and that's how we were able to get a lot of these modalities that we're relearning today. And even then, Pythagoras received his teachings when he spent 15 years in Egypt practicing with the Chemetics, which were I guess, at that time, the royal servants or like scholars in the esoteric or occult world, for example. So that's why, when I got these different decks and whatnot, I try to get as close as to the source as possible as far as like archetypes and information and whatnot, because I like accuracy and also feeling that connection to those really old, societies and civilizations. But um, all of them are going to be used like either together in a combination or just like separately. And like I said, I'll show you, as I'm moving through the reading, I'll show you the cards, what they mean, and we'll start off with a collective reading for everyone and see what comes up, especially since we just finished going through the new moon on, what was it, Wednesday, Thursday?
Was it the 28th?
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah,
it's
pretty sure it was
yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a new cycle for me started yesterday. That's why I'm like, I think it was yesterday.
All right, so I'll show you what the spread looks like right now. I don't know if you can see it properly. Can you see it?
Yes.
Cool. So let me see. Should I set this up in a way where it's more visible to the table? Mm,
I like that. And then if you hold it up as you go, I think that's a good angle. What do you think, Nikki?
like this?
Yeah, and then you can hold each card up so we can see them.
Right. Let me just open up this PDF really quick. I do like to reference the PDF because it gives you like a more technical and practical understanding. I'll show you it with each individual card actually. All right, so the first card is the Wheel of Fortune. That's card number 10 in the Arcana. Mm, there it is. Can you see the card?
Yes.
So this is the Wheel of Fortune. And then here is, actually, before I start explaining, these two cards from the Major Arcana, what they represent is going to be the main theme of the reading. And so this card will be the one that's at top. This is messages from the spiritual realm, which is what we have right now is the Wheel of Fortune. So that's the main theme from the spiritual realm. And then for the material realm is messages relating to that is the card Strength. So here, and they're actually right next to each other, 10 and 11. Cool. So the Wheel of Fortune, let me just move this sideways, is the planet Uranus as expressed through the sign of Capricorn. Uranus represents the unexpected of dramatic, and Capricorn indicates manifestation of internal processes in the external world. In numerology, 10 is the number of a cycle completed and the realization of a major challenge, together with the capacity to meet that challenge no matter how strenuous or dramatic it may be. In a reading, Arcanum 10 can indicate an unexpected event, a major change in one's circumstance, the beginning of a new cycle. It denotes a tangible set of circumstances which will have to be dealt with. It symbolizes a need for an awareness of the dynamic perspective, um, the dynamic energy of the ego and the necessity to put into perspective the demands of that ego. And then I'll get to the interpretation in a moment. I'm just going to read both of them really quick. And then for strength, we have the astrological correspondence is the luminary, the moon expressed through the sign of Leo. The moon represents the translation of light, the principle of response and emotional exploration, expressed through the sign of personal discovery through the use of power. 11, traditionally the master number, is concerned with the conflict between ego and the outside world, and often is indicated of danger, vulnerability, and the abuse of personal power. It is also learning to cooperate with others through the knowledge of your own strength. Arcanum 11 indicates stamina and fortitude to cope with any situation. Occasionally, it may imply that one is under the dominion of a powerful woman. There is an inference that one is exploring one's sexuality and coming to an understanding that sexual and spiritual energy are the same energy. Nice. And then I can return this back to normal. So the spiritual theme and the material theme kind of just like coincides with one another. Um, Basically, I feel like collectively it is true that we are going through a lot of change. And within those changes, we're actually, and it's interesting because I was going to mention just now that we do have the tower card present on the table. And it feels like collectively there's a lot of us that are going through a lot of tower moments where things are kind of just like not necessarily having to always be in a material sense, but in whether emotional, spiritual, or mental, things are kind of just like falling apart. And that could be like paradigms, that could be belief systems, that can be human conditioning or the way that we interact with our external reality. And so, in that sense, everyone's essentially having to now, not that there's more responsibility, but take more accountability and responsibility in their lives as we're all, especially being um it's expected of us to grow, as a society. And that's just how history is always going to be, is that we're always meant to grow. We're not meant to stagnate within certain rigid systems. So the Wheel of Fortune does represent, the seasons, the cycle of time, the completion of cycles as well, and walking into entirely new lifestyle and entirely new paths for every single individual, and kind of reassessing, um, our current circumstances and what it is that we'd like to do moving forward. And what the Strength card represents, it's just the power of the divine feminine being able to, have that strength to even be face to face with the tiger. And even with all of that, power, the universe reminds us that if we are overbearing with our power, or we allow empowering experiences to get to our ego, for example, here in the background, there's always the opportunity for something even as small as a snake to put you back down. So it reminds us that, like, yes, there's going to be a lot more responsibility expected of people, especially people who are walking into leadership roles, people who are community builders, and things of that nature, these roles. But reminding us that, like, don't let it get to your ego, because the universe, even though you might have conquered something that would be intimidating like a tiger, it can just send a snake that you may not even be aware of, because it's not like entirely visible. You could be walking in the grass and all of a sudden there's just a snake within the grass, for example. And so life reminds us every day that, we are still mortal, we are still capable of either not straying too far, like into the good, or into the bad, but figuring out that balance, figuring out that balance between the spiritual aspects of ourselves and then also the material aspects of ourselves. So kind of just like how our conversation earlier is allowing ourselves to be led by love instead of the ego. And that's what spirit ultimately represents as well. So here we also have the Five of Wands. The element fire has a lot to do with, for example, manifestation, passions, and things like that. And just for the quick reference, this is the burning hand with fingers becoming torches. Creative energy, a flow of creativity. So in this particular spread that I do, I split it into three columns. This side here, for example, would be present circumstances and things that are being brought to awareness at the current moment. The middle is kind of like the eye of the storm, and something, walking into our power, or how we can become more centered, with all the energy that's revolving around us every day. And then the third column here is energy that is like either in the near future or in a distant future, but still remains within our path, that's coming to us within the spiritual realm, our path, and then the material realm. So I split them into like 3 rows and 3 columns, essentially. So starting with the first column, having to do with present, is tapping into our creative potential. And that's further reinforced by the 3 of coins. As you can see at the top, you have the alchemical symbols of mind, body, and spirit, which is sulfur, salt, and mercury. And here is a guy working on a drawing. I don't know if you can see it, but in the background, in the window, you see where he gets his inspiration from. The waters represent the subconscious, which is also linked to spirit. And the fact that water is making contact with earth means that he is, in a sense, channeling or bringing about from his subconscious desires and manifesting that into his material world and bringing that to the land. So through creativity, through creative expression and the liberty of our expression as a whole, um, is where we'll seek and find our own empowerment, which now we have the magician, in the material realm, which makes a lot of sense because the magician is about having an in-depth understanding of the four elements, which is fire, air, earth, and water, and along with the fifth additional element, which is spirit, which holds everything together. And so the magician also holds the Caduceus staff, which represents the energy of Kundalini. It has to do with the chakras, our spinal cord, and also both of the hemispheres of the brain. So throughout history, it's always been, taught that when you have ascended, through your chakras and allowed both hemispheres, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, to connect and be in harmony with one another, you become, not in a sense of enlightenment. Enlightenment is not the goal. Enlightenment is just part of the journey, where when you receive enlightenment, the goal for you to receive enlightenment is for others to experience it through you. Because now that you've received, that gained awareness, you can spread that around you so others can experience that for themselves too. And that's why we have the god Mercury, as represented by his hat, is like the wings are on the temples of his head. So his masculine and feminine has now reached, that angelic state, that connected sense to spirit. And he becomes the messenger for spirit, just much like we all are. Because at the end of the day, by us expressing ourselves is getting in tune, with the creative life force energy, whether that be represented through our sexual or spiritual energy, which is, one and the same. And that's how we're able to create abundance. That's how we're able to create love, not just for ourselves internally, but others experience it, as a byproduct of our cultivation of our skills, of our modalities, and our practice and whatnot. In the center is the hermit. The hermit is often correlated to, like, states of like loneliness, but more so, it doesn't mean you have to like isolate yourself, but really go into this contemplative and introspective sense. Actually, I'll put it back up. As you can see, he's holding a lantern and he does look kind of gloomy, but really he's just like on this long trek and journey throughout life. And the lantern is the only thing that is illuminating his path and representing his connection to spirit and reliance on it. He's relying on this candle and this lantern to essentially guide him through his journey and having full faith that he will be guided to where he needs to be. So the hermit also reminds us, to take time for ourselves, to look over ourselves, to, have that little self-care and take a break and not overwhelm ourselves, overwork ourselves to the point that we can't even operate in a stable sense. When you become, centered and when you give yourself that time and space to recharge, you become wise like this old man. The guy hasn't even shaved, he has a long beard. Which, historically speaking, back then, having a long beard, was usually correlated to like being wise or like knowledgeable or having gone through long periods of time of not cutting your hair. So the tower, um, like I said earlier, represents that is by going into the hermit mode, there may be um, a sense of preparation in the future. And this could be something that we'll collectively experience, where things in society or in the environment, the economy, however it may be, even if it's like within your own personal boundaries of your home or your community, you may be challenged with some towering moments. The tower represents, the natural force of the universe represented by the lightning striking down, what they've created, this foundation of a structure. And so you have this male and female who look like they're in desperation. And here, the red is represents fear, blood, and mortality, and then the white represents milk, purity, and hope. So the tower represents that, like, we can fall into the state of confusion and fear if we allow our environmental factors kind of just like take us with the current, like a hurricane. And instead of being in the eye of the hurricane, we're kind of just allowing life to throw us in any direction. So by being that hermit and being able to have confidence and confide in spirit to guide us to where we need to be, Even something like the tower moment still has the opportunity of hope and purity and guidance and direction. Because even though when something is destroyed, nothing remains destroyed permanently. You still may have your foundation that you can rebuild upon. And that's the most important aspect about the tower, is that things that are destroyed sometimes are serving your highest good, even if you currently can't see that right now. So it reminds us to not take things personally, because the things that are probably even being removed from our lives is may not even be serving us, or it just is not it's becoming stagnant. And so the universe is now stepping in the form of a lightning bolt to create change on your behalf, for example. So high priestess is now above us, as far as like spiritual energy coming towards us. She represents the intuition, the knowledge of esotericism, the moon, the subconscious waters of the right hemisphere of our brain, which is the divine feminine, and our connection to source, our connection to spirit and creativity. So the high priestess also reminds us to tap into our intuition more, instead of trying to approach everything in a very assertive, aggressive manner, which is our dominant male energy, is reminding us to have that balance of the feminine as well, because we embody both, within our body. So it's telling us to tap in, with whenever these tower moments come for all of us, at whatever pace they do come, to remind us to tap into our intuition instead of reacting, out of the whatever the first thing that happened. Instead of reacting, kind of just take a step back and realize, what is it that got us to this point? What led up to this event? Nothing just happens overnight. Like, there's always some sort of buildup of energy that causes this explosion um, of change. And so if we try to approach an explosion of aggression with our explosion of emotions and reactions, it's kind of just like playing with fire with fire. So tap into your intuition, tap into your nurturing side, take care of yourself, and remind yourself that, like, we're not in control, like, at the end of the day. And we just have to allow ourselves to be blessed in whatever way that may look like, even if we don't have the current understanding. The Lady of Coins, in the material realm, is now talking about someone who's kind of like a patron of the arts. And you'll see here, actually, she has a coin purse, she has flowers, she has the the divine feminine symbol, the moon coin. And she's just surrounded by nature, and she has this overall nonchalant expression on her face. In our material realm, whatever the circumstances may be, it talks about us just like operating out of, even if you're financially struggling or not, but always remembering that we have the opportunity to extend, that gesture of love. And with the Lady of Coins, there's a specific word I actually want to read out here. Um, it's all about, like, the wealth, patronage, and aesthetics at the end of the day that gives beauty to life. So if you have to take a time of, like, treating yourself out in, like, let's say you've been working for like a month straight, not really giving yourself the opportunity to go experience life, give yourself that opportunity, to treat yourself, and for you to kind of just like relax, whether it is through enjoying art, going out to like venues, spending time with the community, having a nice little dinner with yourself or with your significant other or friend. That's, the opportunity that having any sort of like financial capability or wealth grants us. It's not just to like pay our bills and like rigidly work our life away, trying to maintain ourselves, but also remind us of, like, hey, sometimes you can treat yourself, sometimes you can have fun, sometimes remind yourself that, like, everything is doesn't have to be so serious, because not even the universe takes itself serious, and we can see that as the way it's expressing itself through us. So that sums up um, the alchemical tarot spreads. And I'm going to go ahead, pull out 3 runes It just usually when I pull out the rooms, it usually just ends up serving as confirmation or kind of just like divulging a little bit more information that may come through for all of us. And we got the blank room. Nothing. There's a mystery. Let me pull up my PDF. So the first room we have, I don't know if you can see it, can you?
It's hard to see because of the light,
Oh,
but that's
can
all
you see
right.
it?
Oh, I can
Okay,
see. Yeah, there we go.
yeah, okay. So this rune is called Jera, and conveniently enough, it actually has some of the similar key terms or keywords. So it represents the harvest, profit, reap the benefits, fertility, cyclicity, a sequence of movements. Jera represents the 12 months of the year. It implies fruitfulness, profit, or achievement of a goal, rewards for past efforts, inventiveness, talent, or skill. A great reward to those who work with their hands or on the land. It also means a cycle of seasons, implying the movement, change, natural development. This is a time of reaping rewards from seeds sown in the past. It is a time of plenty, of joy and celebration. But it is also a time to work with no time for complacency. The harvest is followed by winter, so you should make sure you have stored enough wisdom to face your next challenge. This is another turning point in life, not a goal. There are greater harvests ahead, but like the farmer, you must prepare the land, sow the seed, tend the seedlings, and feed the fruit. Kind of like what the Wheel of Fortune Major Arcana was talking about as well, including in collaboration with the Towering Moments. And then we have the Blank Room. And this is considered kind of like the God Room. Let's see. Blank is the end, blank the beginning. This is the rune of total trust, and should be taken as exciting evidence of your most immediate contact with your own true destiny, which time and again rises like the phoenix from the ashes of what we call fate. Nothing is predestined. There is nothing that cannot be avoided. And if indeed there are matters hidden by the gods, you need only remember what beckons is the creative power of the unknown. Whenever this rune appears in your spread, take heart. It is a source from which flows the energy for self change. Know that the work of self transformation is progressing in your life. I like that.
I do too. It kind of leads into one another, how the first one says, sow the seeds and to prepare for harvest, and then the next one is transformation that comes.
Right. Okay. And then this is inverted manas. So it came up upside down. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So the keywords are rigid, resistant to change, selfish, self-centered, cruel, rude, harsh, traitor, reckless, chaos, and confusion. When drawn, this rune counsels to begin facing up, releasing and admitting to yourself that in order to progress, you must first clear away the blockage within. Only then you will be able to satisfactorily deal with outside blockages. Breaking the momentum of old habits is the task here. Remember that in the life of the inner self, you are always at the beginning. The rune tells you about a dark period of life for you. Friends may turn from you. You may develop bad habits, a feeling of your powerlessness and uselessness. It may seem to you that the whole world is against you, but if you dare to analyze the current situation, you will see no matter how bad all around, the root of the problem is your inner qualities: greed, envy, deceit, unwillingness to face the truth, but not an external source as we thought. So I think this further reminds us that like just as we're capable of experiencing positive experiences, we're also capable of creating negative experiences for ourselves too. And that's the power of, consciousness of our thought is that creation does not have a bias. It comes in the form of creating shadow and light. And so, in order for us to experience transformation and changes in our life, we have to embrace the fact that we do have aspects of ourselves that could potentially be unhealed patterns from childhood and are still lingering even to our current day that manifests into behavior patterns that we may not necessarily be proud of at times. And being able to address those core wounds is, essential for your development in, in your life as a whole. In order for you to experience transformation, you're gonna have to dig really deep. Like, what exactly is it that you're trying to transmute? Where exactly are you experiencing blockages? Or what aspects of your life is being addressed at the current moment, that you may need to reflect upon in order for you to in order for you to start beginning to in order for you to begin to start. I'm saying like two words that are the same. In order for your expansion to continue and develop, essentially, your light is only a measure as to how far you're willing to explore your own shadows. So using your shadows is what projects your light forward, kind of like a slingshot. So the farther you go, and the more you're able to open yourself up to yourself and figure out core aspects of your personality, you can just project in the other direction and be that light. So the things that you deal with in your personal life, those shadow aspects that can be very difficult, in turn, when you work through them, you'll feel a lot lighter. And that's where now the light comes in that everyone else experiences. So on in the external sense, when you're out in public or with surrounded by people and whatnot, they're like, oh my God, you just have this aura around you that is just like so light and like inviting and like embracing and warm. But like in the reality of things, they don't really know what it took for you to get to that present state of being, where you look so calm and tranquil in your life. Like you this whole time, like, let's say you saw the last time you saw them was a month ago. In between that whole month, you could have been going through like mental breakdowns, having conflicts, and like figuring out so many things in your personal life and going through this like, turbulent waters. And now you've reached this calm state of being because you've addressed all that and you've confronted your fears and you've come to terms with your past even. And that's the power of learning to empower yourself, is that you're accepting who you are and not allowing your past to dictate or even mold who you are as an individual. That's what transformation looks like.
Thank you. It's a good reminder that we all have those aspects, and
Exactly.
it's okay to face them, right? And allow them to transform who you are. If you want to transform your outside world, you have to transform it from the inside first.
Exactly.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. Are we moving into the Reiki healing now?
Yes.
Okay.
So now I like to do an accompanied breathwork meditation,
Okay.
similar to what we did in the beginning, where it's an inhale. You breathe into your nose, you fill up your diaphragm, your chest, your throat, and your head till you can't breathe in anymore. Hold it for 4 seconds. Exhale through your mouth, but don't force it out. Just allow it to naturally flow and don't let all of the air escape. So your lungs have remaining oxygen. And then inhale again. 4 seconds. Exhale. And just repeat that throughout the session. And in this moment, allow yourself to be receptive to the energy that flows all around us, which is Reiki, translates to the universal life force energy. It's what animates us, reinvigorates us, rejuvenates us, inspires us, heals us on a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual sense. It is not bound by time and space. It just is and exists, recognizing it is within not just us, but also within the web of consciousness and what keeps us all interconnected and alive. From humanity to our pets, animals, nature, the planet itself, much like there's little hairs on your arms. We're like these little strands of hair on the earth. And in that sense, we'll always be interconnected, not individual from one to the other, but coexisting and sharing time and space in the present moment at all times, despite whatever it is we are facing in our own personal lives. And now envision that connection of that gained awareness of everything that you are within and outside of yourself, like a tunnel of light entering from your crown, the top of your head, and moving down your spine all the way to the root, where the tailbone is located. Entering through the right hemisphere of your brain, traveling down the left side of your body, which is your divine feminine. And once it reaches the root, it circulates upwards. And in a sense, it's like a stream of energy and water. And in a way that the river moves everything in its path, the rocks, sediments, debris, things like blockages, trauma, unaddressed patterns. It's creating movement in all of that, in the stagnation. And from the root, you bring it back up through the right side of your body, slowly moving upwards. You're connecting to your left hemisphere, your divine masculine. And the intention is to remind yourself that you are both and synchronize through both. And just as we seek that harmony within the temples of our mind, we can seek the harmony of the feminine, the masculine, in the external world as well. There is no division between either or. And so I invite you to receive Reiki at your own pace, whether today, tomorrow, or if you're feeling apprehensive because it's your first time with Reiki, you want to give yourself a week, that works too. But just know that the universe will always be present and waiting to embrace you, allowing yourself to be receptive to that reciprocity. Continue the breath work. And now we'll move onward into the mantras before closing the Reiki session. Om, Om, Om. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Om. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Om Om. Om Namo Bhagavate Paiseja Guru Vaidurya Prabharejaya Tatakataya Arate Samyak Sambudaya Tadeta. Om Baisaja Maha Baisaja Raja Sa Okata Swaha. Om 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 Printa Prakar Hotaye Chapte Changa Hotaye Arman Spasht Hotaye Premta Prakar Hotaye Chapte Changa Hotaye Arman Spasht Hotaye Om 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 Mava Mate Mahimoha Emao Maevupa Yeta Tutu So Om Om Om. Thank you. Hold on. I can't hear
All
you.
right. Oh
Can you
my
hear?
goodness. Thank you so much for providing the divination, the reading, and the healing. I feel lighter already. And for everyone else who is joining, I'm going to close off today's session with a reminder that whatever it is that you are seeking, it is already here. And simple practices like what Enki suggested, mindset shifts, right? Tapping into looking at things that are already abundant in your life, becoming more aware, becoming more grateful for the things that you do have. And the more that you focus on the things that you have surrounding you already, whether that's one special friend, whether that's your family, whether that is, you know, being able to be here today, right? You have a device to be able to connect with people. You're able to be here today. You are able to breathe. You're able to see the sunlight. You're able to connect to Mother Nature whenever you'd like. And reconnecting to those little things that you didn't notice that are out there, out in the world, and here, present in this very moment. Every single day, we'll continue to cultivate the energy of abundance and bring forth more abundance into your life. With that said, thank you everyone for joining me, and feel free to share this with anyone who you think will get a lot of support from. And thank you, Enki, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. With that said, have a wonderful day.
Have a blessed day. I
And
love you, Nikki.
I love you too. And we love you for everyone else who is here. The universe loves you.